Oh, lately I've been big into dishwashing music and like trying to make dishwashing music, actually.
Oh, wow.
Because that's like my favorite time to listen to music.
Yeah. Are we like the sound of bubbles?
No, it's like, okay, what are my dishwashing music? Like, I like Mariah Carey when I'm washing the dishes.
Yeah.
For some reason, like, there's other singers from that era that I really like, but not washing the dishes. It's like Janet? No.
Yeah.
No, I need Mariah. I'm washing the dishes.
Yeah. Welcome to This Broken Mixtape, the podcast that rewinds and presses play on the soundtrack to your life. I'm Jeff Wu.
I'm Justin Lee.
Toronto's Shadrach Kabango, simply known as Shad, is not your average rapper. In just a little over a decade, Shad has released 5 albums that have garnered multiple awards, sold out shows across the country, and hosted CBC One Radio's Q. More recently, Shad has taken on the role of hip-hop historian as the host of the Peabody-winning Netflix documentary series, Hip Hop Evolution. All of this makes you wonder how the guy ever finds the time to sleep.
Welcome to This Broken Mixtape. We're here with our special guest, Shad. Welcome to the show, Shad.
How you doing?
How's it going?
First off, I got to give a big shout out to Justin Broadbent for introducing us, making this happen. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule.
No, gladly, yeah.
Yeah. Shad, actually, I don't know if you remember, but we first met 12 years ago. At the time, I was doing this small little zine called Eclectic Dyslexic.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah.
I think that was the first interview I've ever done.
Really? Okay.
Wow.
I think so. I remember, was a woman named Emily writing that?
Emily?
Did she write that? No.
No.
Okay,
I
then
think
that
I think
maybe-
I might have done the
I think,
interview myself.
Yeah.
But it might have just been. I don't think it was a face to face. I think it might have been over email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then later we met because for that issue we did a small promo party and Sadat X was headlining and then we got
at
you
the Elma
to.
Convo.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. No,
And I remember,
I'm pretty
like-
sure that was my first interview I've ever done.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
but it
fun.
was a great show and you killed it.
Thank you.
Sadat X was awesome. Obviously.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Yeah.
I totally remember that. I think
What is that,
was
like 2005?
2005.
2005. Yeah.
Wow.
You feel really old.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot has happened in the last 12 years. You've since put out, has it been 4 records? 5 records, including my boy Tony.
Yeah,
Tony,
exactly. Yeah. So five in total.
Yeah. And then obviously a bunch of EPs. You were hosting CBC's Q for a while. And now Hip Hop Evolution. So Hip Hop Evolution, for people that don't know, it's HBO Canada's documentary series about the birth and rise of hip hop in the Bronx.
Correct.
And you are the host of this show.
Yeah.
And I got to ask you first off, is it picked up for a second season?
Yes. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but
Okay.
yes. I think we're not supposed to, like really announce what's going on and everything.
Sure.
But yeah, some rappers we do interviews with will post, hey, Hip Hop Evolution was here and so on and so forth. But yeah, we're making more, which is super fun. And people have kind of been interested in seeing more. So it's nice to be able to kind of continue the story and keep kind of moving through time periods. And, I think fans of the music really enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. You guys won a Peabody for it. Yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a lovely surprise for sure.
Yeah. So how did you become involved with that project?
So Darby Wheeler, who's the director, and Rodrigo Bascunin, who is the writer and one of the main producers. So both of them invited me in for an interview not really an interview, more like a meeting. When was this? This was maybe 2012.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they were talking about this project that they're doing, and I'm talking with Rodrigo, who used to he started Pound Magazine, which is a great hip hop magazine. I think one of the best hip hop magazines ever. Period. So I'm talking with him, and he's great and super smart and fun to work with. And I'm looking at the bookshelf behind him, and I see the titles there. And it's like he's got all the books. He's got all the, And the meeting was at Banger Films, who made Metal Evolution series for people that are familiar with that. It was a really great series as well. So I'm like, okay, that's strong. And then Darby, I knew Darby from his days working with Strombo's show. And also he worked at Much Music for a long time, and I knew he knew what he was doing and like knows basically everything about rap music. So I left that meeting kind of going, these guys are going to kill it. I feel like I can't not do this. It's going to be really fun, and these guys are going to do a good job. So that's kind of how it started. And then, TV and film world, it's like it takes forever to like get greenlit and the funding, blah, 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 blah. So then we ended up starting, I think, about a year later, maybe 2013.
Okay.
Yeah, we went around and started filming and stuff. So, that's kind of how that came about.
Yeah. And, I mean, I think, like, I can understand your initial trepidation, because covering a massive subject like hip-hop culture, hip-hop music and culture is, like, very daunting. And I've seen so many, not bad documentaries about hip-hop, but just, like... Yes. They just didn't do enough homework.
It's a massive undertaking, for one, and then secondly, it's difficult to execute. Even if you understand the scope of it and you do all your research, it's just difficult to execute. And you're right, and that was one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to be a part of it too, because when I thought about it, suddenly in that meeting, I was like, oh yeah, there is no great documentary film about the history of hip hop. Yeah. There's some great books.
Sure.
But I couldn't think of a great film about the history of hip hop. Yeah, it's fascinating on a lot of levels for me, for sure. But one thing that was important to all of us was like, this history, these people that carry this history are not going to be here forever. Yeah. Let's talk to them and let's get their stories and get it captured in a way that's entertaining.
Yeah. Was there one personality more than any other that you were kind of initially like nervous about interviewing, just because you revere them on such a high level? I mean, obviously you interviewed so many people for this, but
that becomes like a difficult question to answer, because so many people. I mean, Kool Herc, he's the godfather. He's kind of the accepted father of hip hop, and that was a bit intimidating because he was this mythical figure to me. You don't have a lot of interviews and exposure to him. Someone like Grandmaster Flash he's around, he moves around, and he's DJing and exhibiting his skills and exhibiting the techniques that are the backbone of hip hop. He's out there a little bit more. Bam also was out there a little bit more. But Herc kind of felt like this mythical figure. So meeting him was one I was looking forward to, but was also a little bit nervous about meeting this guy. Yeah.
So, I mean, for people, our listeners who aren't familiar with this show's format, each episode is about an hour long, and you focus on, I think I would say that it's probably maybe like a 3 to 5 year span for each episode, right? Roughly.
Okay.
Because you started, obviously, birth of hip hop, late 70s, and then up until the four-parter, you get up to the birth of gangster rap, which is late 80s, early 90s.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. So you could say 73 to 93, roughly. Yeah, 20 years between 4 episodes. Yeah, right. About 5 years an episode.
So for the second season, I mean, I guess you can kind of just... based on that, you can kind of infer where it's going.
Yeah. I can't reveal too much, but yes, we're still kind of mapping out I won't say that we're going to go just straight forward in time from where we left off, but we're still mapping the history. And yeah, roughly in those kind of time chunks. And it's called Hip Hop Evolution. So we're trying to focus on certain moments that changed the genre in some way, that pivoted the music in one direction or another. So that's kind of what we're using to mark the different shifts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, people can expect much of the same and hopefully a few surprises. I think that's what people liked a little bit about season 1, because that history is not exactly new to fans of the genre, but there are little things that are surprising, and I think it's mapped out in a way that's also entertaining, because the music is entertaining and the people that make it are entertaining. And so I'm glad that it felt like that too for people watching. It wasn't dry, because I don't think the music is supposed to be dry. Yeah.
Did you guys ever get not resistance, but the fact that you guys are mostly Canadian coming in and doing something that is quite obviously American, started off as an American culture? Were people like, what's happening here?
You know what? Surprisingly, I think to some extent, but surprisingly, I think people appreciated that we were outside of whatever politics, whatever sort of conflicts and tensions and histories might exist. You know what I mean? I think as outsiders, it kind of helped people trust us a little bit.
Like that there was no hidden agenda.
There was no hidden agenda, that we aren't pushing a particular idea of the history. None of that was involved. I actually think that helped us more than it hindered us, which is kind of nice. But yeah, we were just fortunate that these people were just kind of up for sharing their stories with us.
Sure.
But yeah, I kind of found more of that than resistance. Was kind of more people being like glad that we're not trying to do anything tabloid. We're not in any particular camp when it comes to telling the story, as far as like, yeah, we're kind of trying to paint somebody as a giant when they're not, or vice versa.
So when you started working on the show, you had not, this was obviously pre-Q.
This was pre-Q. This was while I was working on Flying Colors.
Okay.
Which was my last rap album that I made.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is like kind of your first stint at really interviewing.
Yeah. That was my first experience with it at all. Yeah. And a very different format from Q.
Right. Absolutely.
Because this is sort of like super long form, like Hip Hop Evolution is like super long form, very loose, and it's all edited. Versus Q, which for the most part was like live and shorter time span. So very different like format, but yeah, that was my first experience like interviewing at all.
When you started working on Hip Hop Evolution, how did you take those skills into hosting Q?
The main thing that I thought about, which is kind of my philosophy, I still consider myself, an amateur, but my philosophy is basically like, this guest is the person that I'm trying to honor and the person that is telling a story. And so my job is to kind of be present, be empathetic, and help them tell their story. So that's kind of the main thing, that I took away from it is that sort of posture and disposition towards another person, which is nice because that should be how we are all the time, or at least more often than not. Right. So, I always appreciate when like my work has some sort of positive impact in the rest of my life, kind of forces me to be the way I should always be anyways.
Yeah, I was like watching the Mark Maron interview that you did, and he spoke about how he didn't know what the definition of empathy was. Until he really like actually looked it up and fully embraced it, that made him become a better interviewer. And I think that's true. Like, to be a great journalist, great interviewer, you have to essentially be empathetic towards the person.
I think so. I think you have to care about them first. That's the thing I like about it too, is like you have to begin with that posture, because the person that, as nervous as you might be, they're nervous too. And so like you kind of have to offer that first gesture of like openness and friendliness and like, I like you and you're welcome here. And, you know, you are my guest and I'm going to track with you intellectually and emotionally as you reveal yourself, you know? Yeah, there's something I like about that.
So over the, you were at Q for about 15 months?
Yeah.
During that time, you interviewed everyone from Salman Rushdie to Elvis Costello to Pam Grier, some of the biggest names in music and politics and, you know, all facets of life. Did you have one guest that you would say surprised you more than anyone else? Just about
Noel Gallagher surprised me. He's much more down to earth than people would probably think. He actually is super down to earth, pretty regular guy. He's as smart and funny as people kind of think that he is. But he surprised me with like how down to earth he was. Very little ego, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I think with the Gallagher brothers, like part of that, a lot of that is just a little bit for show, for entertainment, and I think people love that. I mean, it's hard not to get a kick out of that.
They get it.
Yeah.
They get it. You know, this is part of being an entertainer and specifically like that's their conception of a rock star. And I like that they have that sort of strict idea. This is what a rock star is. Rock star speaks their mind all the time or pretends to in a way that's funny and they're always entertaining. And I don't know. I appreciate that full commitment.
Yeah, it's a total awareness of just what you're trying to be and who you are and how you represent yourself.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And you know, again, what I appreciate is like he's not lost in it. Sitting face to face with him, it's like he's not lost in it. He gets it fully. And maybe at some point in his career he got lost in it, but certainly when I sat across from him, I'm like, this guy is truly a down-to-earth guy. He gets what he's doing when he's making fun of, you know, the teen star of the moment or whatever he's saying to be funny. And
yeah, I wonder how he feels watching himself say those things. I know he's saying it live, but you're watching and recording of yourself doing that. And he's like, yeah, I did a good job.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
I think he's just like a comedian.
Yeah.
Being like, oh yeah, that was a killer set. That's how he considers an interview. I think, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys caught him on Jules Holland. I think it was like last week. Made like music blog headlines because he had this woman playing the scissors, literally just scissors up to the mic.
Yeah.
Closing and opening them, and you couldn't hear it at all.
No.
And then of course, like they interviewed Liam the next day, some publication, and they asked him about that. And he's like, yeah, maybe for my next show, I'll have some woman peeling a banana on stage. You know, just you gotta love a Gallagher. It's like,
Yeah.
Totally.
so great. So let's backtrack here
Yeah.
and take it back to early childhood.
Yeah.
What was some of the music being played around the house? What, if you can remember some of the first records that you were exposed to?
Yeah. So my house was, my dad played African music from different countries. My family's from Rwanda, so we played some Rwandan music, some Congolese music, some West African music, bunch of different stuff. Gospel music. Also, my dad was into that. My mom was not crazy into music. She didn't have any kind of collection or anything. And then my aunts played Simon and Garfunkel. And I loved that. This is like early. This is like 4 or 5 years old. Still like Simon and Garfunkel. But at that time, that was big for me. I think that's my earliest real strong memories of music is like Simon and Garfunkel washing the dishes with my aunts. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite song from them at the time?
At the time, it was The Boxer. I don't know why that song captivated me as a kid. Maybe it's the loud snare or something like that. It's like very obviously emotional, and maybe I gravitated towards that. I listen to the lyrics now. I'm like, I didn't understand, you know, anything that was going on in that song. But that's the cool thing about music too, right? You just like feel it, and even a child can understand the emotions. You know, you see these prodigy young singers. I see Celine Dion on this on the table here. You know, you see these little kids singing Celine Dion. They're like 10. And it's like, how do you understand the like, how are you carrying the emotion of the song? And like they get it. They've never like lost love or anything like that. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. But yeah, Simon and Garfunkel.
Okay. And then can you recall the first CD that or tape that you bought with your own money? before that was, given
Yeah,
to
I
you?
think it was Joe Public Live and Learn
Okay.
cassette single, but there might have been stuff before that because I was really into music, popular music from when I was 5, watching music video shows and stuff. So I remember really liking Belinda Carlisle when I was like 5 or 6.
And you have an older sibling, right? It's
Older sister.
Did she get you into a lot of stuff, or?
She did. We saw eye to eye on. Well, she didn't actually get me into stuff because we're very close in age. So we kind of discovered stuff at the same time. So we watched, music videos at the same time. We were fans of a lot of the same stuff and listened to the radio and same thing there. And then I think when she got to about 13, our taste differed a little bit. So I remember, for example, she had the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack on repeat.
It's a great soundtrack.
It's a great soundtrack.
I still listen to that
but
once in a while.
there are moments on it when like I'm 12 and I'm trying to listen to Raekwon or something. And I remember there was one song on there it's like CeCe Winans and I don't know who singing about friendship, and it was just like. That's my first memory of being like, Charity, like, I think we need some separate CD time, we can't just share this thing anymore. But yeah, we basically shared the same taste in music with a few notable exceptions that started to come into play around junior high. But yeah, we love music together. We watch tons of music videos and listen to the radio together.
And your sister was the one that essentially just kind of got all together your music for the radio contest.
Totally.
92.1, was it?
Yeah, it was a radio station in Kitchener-Waterloo, and that was in 2004. And she got a demo together for me. I think she helped me record a demo, and then she packaged it all up with a little bio and stuff, and she submitted it to this unsigned talent competition, and I was fortunate enough to win. But yeah, that was her getting me organized, big sister.
And then with the proceeds from that, you released your first album.
Exactly.
Recorded and released, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So up until that point, how long had you been like writing rhymes and rapping?
Oh, what's the history? So right around that time and a little bit before that, I was actually rapping with a group called Bread and Water. Couple of guys that I met in high school, and we kind of formed a group once we finished high school. And then one of those guys was working with some guys he met in school called Fountain Street Blues Project. So we sort of merged those two projects and so I was experimenting with music a couple years prior, and that's when I started writing rhymes. Before that, in high school, I was freestyling a lot with friends, but not really writing very much. I didn't really take it that seriously. I think I only started to take it more seriously once I got a little bit older and I felt there were things that I wanted to express. I don't know, I got angsty. I wasn't an angsty teenager. I think I was an angsty young 20-ian.
It was all those student fees.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what gets you.
Something like that.
Damn loans.
Yeah, I think it's like you have to figure it out at that point. Prior to that, I was kind of on autopilot, or not autopilot, but at least cruise control, and doing the things that other teenagers did. I worked at McDonald's. I played basketball, and I had a girlfriend, and I went to high school. And then after that, it's like, hold on, my adult life is starting. I have to decide. And I think that causes some angst. And
So in those early years of becoming an artist and kind of figuring out what you want to do creatively, who were some of your music influences?
I think that I had absorbed a lot from what I listened to in high school. So I think I absorbed a lot from Common. I think I absorbed a lot from Black Thought. Eminem to some extent as well. I think those are probably my primary influences. Common was the first rapper that I studied, would go on to what was online hip hop lyric archive at the time before genius.com. And I would, print out Common lyrics and study how he put his lyrics together. And then Eminem with his sense of humor and the way that he could be so conversational and be rhyming at the same time. That really caught my attention. I was studying that. And Black Thought just just as a sort of machine, lyrically, and incredible ability with like turn of phrase and very interesting creative word choices and stuff like that. So I think I studied them deliberately and then also kind of absorbed a lot from them. So those are probably my primary influences.
Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of Eminem, you heard the new song today, right? That he just put out?
No.
He put out that new song with Beyonce, Walk on Water.
Okay, I've heard
and
that.
it's really just like there's no beat. It's just a piano line and Beyonce singing.
Yeah.
And it's just I don't know. I don't know what to think of it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all just like avant-garde.
Yeah.
At this point.
At the very end of the song, last 5 seconds, he just blurts out, "Bitch, I wrote Stan." And I'm like, what a way to go off on a song. Like, can you imagine if every other artist on his level did that? Like if Elvis Costello was just like, "Bitch, I wrote Allison."
Yeah.
I'd
Just
like to
send
see a little bit more of
reminders
that.
at the end of the song. Yeah. Listen to this. It's kind of like a
It's ridiculous.
link to that.
I almost feel like it was like a joke, but they're like, yeah, let's just keep it in there.
Yeah.
So we all kind of come from like, being fans of like golden age of hip hop. And it's like, I constantly try to remind myself today that hip hop today is not for me. It wasn't made for me. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if I like it or not. And I have a lot to say about it, but I'm curious about what your thoughts on like, the whole mumble rap kind of sound and like, just hip hop.
I kind of have a theory about that, which is that rap kind of progressed to this point where by 2010 you had like My Dark Twisted Fantasy and like Good Kid Mad City and these incredible rap albums where the rapping is incredible, the sampling is incredible, the musicianship is incredible, the arrangements are incredible, and then they've mastered this new studio environment as well to some extent, especially like Good Kid Mad City. Like Kendrick is a master of the studio and all of the things that you can do to make your music come alive, not just in terms of like rhythm and melody and lyrics, but also just like sonically. Mm-hmm. So my theory is that represented like, that's almost this endpoint in a sense. Like I feel like you can do that again. You can't really do it better. And you certainly can't do it if you're 15. Mm-hmm. So what do kids do? I think then that's when you kind of go back to sort of a punk rock thing. You know what I mean? Like almost in the 70s, like if you have like jazz and funk and prog and all the stuff, and then it's like some kid just needs to pick up an instrument of any kind and express themselves, you go back to something extremely raw. And that's my theory. I think that some of the music that kids make now carries that energy, and it just because, look, you had Eminem and Black Thought in the 90s rapping as well as they rap now. You can't rap better, and you have studio albums like we had, 7-8 years ago, and they can't exactly get better. So that is my theory of that music. I'm like you. I feel like it's not for me. I'm not in the environments where that's played very much anymore. And I really believe that music is contextual. It's all about the spaces that you're in. And in certain spaces, that music is the vibe. It resonates. It is banging. It is the energy of those spaces and that time and that kind of that whole thing. And I'm not in those spaces enough to like really grasp it. Enough to certainly enough to like do it myself. But I think that that's kind of that's my theory about it.
So aside from Kendrick, are there any like current MCs that you actually respect?
I think are great. Yeah, there's quite a number. There's just so much music now, I think Kendrick's great. I think Chance is great. I think Mick Jenkins is great. Adam Baum here in Toronto has been like putting out tons of material in the last year, and he's like incredible. There's so many rappers now that I think are good in that vein, you know, in that sort of style. I think rap has evolved to this point now where it really is different things. So, for example, there was this BET cypher, I think it was 2016 or something. And they had, no, it wasn't BET ciphers. It was the XXL freshman ciphers that they do with the hottest new rappers. And for the first time ever, the cipher format made no sense for what these kids do. It just didn't make sense, which tells me that like that's a different genre of music almost. You know, you have like Designer. That's a different genre. That's like, he's basically, you know, he was in this cipher doing like a 4-bar refrain over and over again. The thing he's best at maybe is those refrains and ad-libs. So that's like a different genre. That's like chorusing or something. It's a different genre, you know? And then in that same cipher, there was Anderson .Paak, who is like a singer. You know, the line between rapping and singing has been super blurred as well, right? Which is cool. It's very creative and it's interesting. So what is he? He's not. He's a musician. He's like a great drummer and a singer and a performer and sort of a rapper. So he didn't exactly fit. And then they had Lil Dicky in that same cipher, who is like a comedian / rapper who makes songs that are sometimes serious, I guess, sometimes comedy, maybe not quite parody. These are like, it's crazy to me. You know, this is like, it's all, they're different genres now. I think you can safely say that. What we know as rapping coming from when we grew up is its own thing. And I think what some kids do now is its own thing.
So where does that put your music? I mean, your last album came out, well, you put out your boy Tony Braxton last year, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I want to ask you about that. Was that, what was the sort of thought process through that? Because for people that don't know, it's kind of like an homage to like sort of, can you almost call it like yacht rock, sort of R&B?
Yeah, totally. It's an homage to like, I'll call it the genre like uncool, good pop music.
Yeah, like something that you would hear at Shoppers Drug Mart and you'd be like, this is a really good song.
Yes,
you know?
The guy that engineered the record and produced it, he said to me at one point, he's like, don't take offense to this, but these all feel like songs that went to number 27 in 1991. And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm that's exactly
that should have been the tagline for the album, right?
That's exactly what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, aiming for 27, number 27.
Yes, because those were always the songs that I really liked, and they have this interesting nostalgia to them because they didn't get overplayed in your own mind to the point where you now hate them and have forgotten everything that was ever good about them. They always sit in this place of like, yeah, I like that song. But they didn't have that thing to make it a hit.
Right.
Know? Anyways, that's sort of the genre. And then like, I also really like with pop songs, I like sort of naive lyrics, especially when they're like existential, like not about romance. Like I like when they're naive about life and existence. Something that's really kind of pure about that. I've always appreciated that. Like Steve Winwood, Higher Love. Like I like the lyrics.
Yeah.
You know, Pet Sounds. Like I like the lyrics.
Yeah.
I think the lyrics are dope.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Pet Sounds.
Yeah. Yeah. They're very sweet, you know?
Yeah.
And earnest and profound, you know, in a way. Profound in the same way as like Uzi Vert when he says all my friends are dead.
You're putting Brian Wilson on the same level as Ooze.
Yeah, I don't know. So
no, I know what you mean though.
That to me is the genre. It's like uncool but good, naive, sweet pop songs is like a concept album.
So when you were making the record, did you have like sort of this plan as to like, did you know that you wanted to tour for it? Did you think that you were just going to do a couple of one-off shows?
I was just, I was kind of taking it one step at a time. You know, I had finished Flying Colors, which was my last rap album, my fourth rap album. And I felt like I had finished this album that was important for me to make, and I was really proud of it. And I had this, the sense that you have whenever you finish an album, which is like you've climbed this mountain and you're done. And then, it was this feeling of like, okay, what's next? And I never quite felt that way when I was done an album, but this time I felt like, okay, what's next? Mm-hmm. And, that happened to coincide with making this documentary, and Q happened about a year later. But also I had embarked on making this album. Like, what if I tried this? So I kind of started one step at a time, put down the sort of acoustic like demos of them, worked on them with my good friend Matthew Johnston, and then they became fuller arrangements, electric guitar and bass and drums kind of based songs. And then I played them for like a couple people at labels. It was like, listen, I'm working on this thing. It's very, very different. I can't express to you how different it is. You'll just have to hear it. And they were super supportive. They're like, I'll put this out. And so we did. And there was no real touring plan. So then when the album was done, it was like, okay, well, if I'm going to play shows, like I got to learn how to sing live. I went to a vocal coach. I never really taken any kind of music lessons. So that was like a cool, again, like on this tip of, okay, what's next? It was like, I'm going to learn about singing. And so I did that, and we played a few shows. So it's been this like interesting journey and cool experience of just being a learner again in a lot of ways. Like vulnerable in a good way, like in a way that I appreciate.
And where did that name come from, your boy Tony Braxton?
Well, that is like my weird like sense of humor. I don't think people like understand it the way that I understand it. And that's my fault because it's hard to explain. But I just really like the idea. So I heard this story once of this guy, and he's like 30 years old. I think he works at the post office or something like that. Maybe he's like about 40, let's say. And his life is totally normal. And then, 10 years ago, this guy named Justin Bieber, who has the same name as him, becomes really famous. And now like he's like, his whole life is based on this fact, right? So to me, like, I was kind of like imagining this kid that's like, he's totally normal kid, and then when he's 12, like let's say he's the same age as me, let's say when he's 9 or 10, this singer named Tony Braxton, and his name is Tony Braxton, becomes super famous. And then the whole rest of his life is kind of a joke. It's not his fault.
Yeah.
But the whole rest of his life is like kind of a joke. And what would make the joke even sadder and funnier is if like he wanted to be a singer, but like his name is
Right.
Tony Braxton.
Yeah.
It's just like, and especially if he's not that great of a singer, if you're great, it's like
you're in the shadow of Tony Braxton as Tony Braxton, right? It's like, you remember that movie Office Space?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
guy's
Yes.
name was Michael
Michael
McDonald.
Bolton, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, Michael Bolton. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's always going to come up in every interview and like new meetings.
Well, here's something interesting.
exactly. And so,
Little Bow Wow.
Yeah.
His real name is Shadrach. Right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not that anyone knows him as that. But
yeah.
It's funny because when I was doing some research on you, sometimes he would come up, and I'm like, this is ridiculous.
I know. I'm actually worried at this point. I might have to like, I don't know, maybe something as simple as like Shad K, because there's like a lot of Shad rappers now.
Really?
There's a lot of Shad rappers. And there's a camp called Shad Valley. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but it's a very important camp for Canadian youth that want to work in science and technology. It's like a big thing on like your resume if you go to Shad Valley camp. And so sometimes I'll go on their website because it just has funny quotes like about Shad. Like I'll just say Shad. I'll just say like 85% of Shads like work in engineering, or they'll just be like, Shad is the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
It's like your daily affirmation. Just do that in the morning with your coffee.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, Shad empowers youth, across the country. And I just like, yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about Canadian hip hop. Now, I mean, with the exception of Drake, one could argue that no one has made it on such a massive international level from Canada. What sort of challenges and barriers exist that that's such a tough ceiling to break through?
Yeah, a lot, but people are breaking through it now. I mean, you're right. Like, not a lot in rap, exactly, right?
Yeah, like
'Cause for some
specifically
reason,
hip hop,
yeah,
and I
for
feel
some
like
reason,
it's
like,
been
yeah.
like that for a long, long time. Like you had these sort of like moments where you're like, oh, I think it might happen, right? Like when Choclair and Cardinal and like Northern Touch, all that happened.
Yeah.
People were excited because they're like, oh, maybe this is going to start happening, maybe. And then you would just see them having these sort of minor successes. Certainly within Canada, there'd be big successes, but then not quite. Like Cardi's had some success,
Yes.
in the States, but obviously not on that level of a Drake.
Yeah, you're right. And I guess I never even really realized it because now when we talk about Drake, we lump in The Weeknd and others. We lump in Bieber. We lump in, who's that kid? Shawn Mendes.
Right.
And, now Daniel Caesar and Jesse Reyes as well, and others kind of having success.
Yeah.
But you're right. They're not exactly rappers. Why is that? I'm not entirely sure. For artists like maybe Cardi or Chaos that have definitely made a mark, but not to that level, I think a lot of that had to do with timing. I can't really imagine either of those guys coming out now and not being massive. I just can't really picture it. Cardi is such a monster talent. And then Chaos, man, I mean, we still spin his hits. Like, and everyone I talk to when I'm touring there or going around for Hip Hop Evolution, they're like, oh yeah, Chaos is the man. Like, everyone I talk to, they're like, Chaos is the man. Especially the years, mid 2000s, late, or, early 2010s. What do we call our decades? I'm not sure. But, those, who else was even his peer then? Very few people in hip hop, I'd say. So I think part of that was like the timing thing. I mean, we've been talking a lot lately about the Tragically Hip. Why didn't they break? They probably would have broke now. There was, borders were more of a thing even 5 years ago than they are now. So part of it is timing. Other part of it, I guess I really don't know. There are doors that have to be opened there for sure that I don't know how one gains access to them, frankly. So I can't really answer your question too well because I don't know. I don't know how you kind of gain access to the.
It's frustrating because I really feel like somebody like yourself should have been at that level with Drake, should have had that kind of success. And it's not to say that you haven't achieved any success. You've had a lot of success, but like I'm saying, on that level of a Drake, there's no reason why you shouldn't have sold millions of records.
Well, thank you.
Outside of Canada.
I think that Drake, to his credit, for sure had a vision right away for that. When I started my career, I was thinking about, I just wanted to go, I just wanted to hit the ground. I wanted to play for whoever I could play for and get my music out however I could. And that was in a very grassroots way. And I kind of put my head down and worked at that. And he had a bigger vision, from jump. He thought bigger. And that might have to do with, his prior experience on television. That might have to do with his family, ties to America, and also, within music to sort of open up his imagination a little bit more. But I think it certainly takes that. I think it takes thinking about your career from the beginning in that way. Because I think it's difficult to grow it, to grow it from something mainly in Canada. Like, there's certain obstacles to that. One of them is if you've established your career in Canada, it's kind of annoying to go elsewhere. It's like, I don't know, I could just stay here. It's good. I've worked hard at building a career here, and it's good. You know, if you're the Tragically Hip, for example, like, I don't know, would you feel like playing little rooms, you know, all over the world when you could just like have a lovely life and career here? So I think you kind of, if you think about it from the outset, as Drake did, like, I want to have an international career at that star level, then you're making plans to do that from the outset, which I think kids do now a lot more from Canada, which is great because we're getting more of that.
Yeah, I think the channels and how to get all that stuff out there is different now too, right? And I think you know, when you're kind of like hungry at doing those things, like you don't, like you're naive enough to not know better, right? But once you've established yourself, it's kind of hard to kind of go back, like what you're saying, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. There's times for everything, right? Like there's a time in your career where you're like, I'm down to grind.
Yeah.
And then that time is done, and you're like, there's a level of work that I'm down to do still. Maybe even more work because you're more disciplined.
Yeah,
and focused,
it's about being smart though, and not just like massive recklessness and kind of just getting out there and just like whatever happens, right? And then yeah. Totally. Definitely, as you get older, I mean, and speaking for myself, it's just like just try to work smarter, like work really hard, but not do ridiculous stuff.
But there is a phase in life where you have to have that. I'm down to do ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
And when that's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so you're just like not going to do that anymore. You can't work stupid anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
I like having a method or a process. Yeah,
totally.
So I imagine that most of your time right now is spent on Hip Hop Evolution, but are you in the process of working on a new album?
Yeah, I'm working on tons of new music now. So yeah, pretty much go film for that. And then whenever I'm home, I'm recording.
Any idea of when we might be able to hear it?
There will be something out next year. Nice. I'm working on more music than I ever have before. Usually I'm just working on one album, and I usually have just enough songs to make that album. Like maybe I could cut one or two in the process and still have enough for a full length. But for some reason this time there's like a lot of music. So one album or another will be out next year for sure.
Great. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So closing off, I have to ask you this: what are your top 5 records? And you know, it could be hip hop or otherwise. Doesn't really matter.
This is hard. You know, this is hard for like any music fan.
Yeah, it's hard.
Okay, so I'd have to pick a Kanye album. I guess I'll go with Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Okay.
I could easily have picked College Dropout, but I'm gonna go with Dark Twisted. Okay, so that's one. That's safe. That's easy. There's an album that I love by a pop punk band called Say Anything. Is a Real Boy. Put that in that category. Now it gets hard. Now it's like,
now you only have like a few more left.
Yeah, now it's a territory of like, I'm gonna call you guys back at some point and be like, you need to alter my answer. Lauryn Hill's Unplugged album.
That's unexpected because almost everyone would say Miseducation, but such an underrated album.
It's an underrated album, and I think what I love about it is like the fact of it almost more than the music, you know? Because the music obviously is like super, super raw, but some of it is still genius level. And I just love the fact of it. I just love that her second album, the only other album that she's ever made, full-length solo album, after her first one, which won like a gajillion Grammys and was like, you know, she was crowned the, you know, best artist in music basically, is the most raw album like ever. She's crying on the album. Her voice is all torn up and tired, and she's playing an instrument that she's still learning, and she's, you know, man, I just love the fact of it. I think it's an album that people should go back and listen to for what it is, which is really strikingly, shockingly honest and vulnerable. I want to like go into the past. I want to like pick one from the past. they're all from the past. But I want to pick one from like maybe before I was born or something. Maybe that's not necessary. I'm just gonna go Thriller.
Okay.
I think that "Wanna Be Starting Something" is like the most danceable song ever, with the possible exception of PYT.
I was gonna say
both on the same
PYT has
album.
always been my favorite.
Yeah, like PYT is incredible. "Wanna Be Starting Something" is incredible. And then I think "Human Nature" is the best soft rock song ever made. Maybe
I gotta say this: Human Nature was ruined for me because the week that Michael Jackson passed away, I was living short term. Found an ad off of Craigslist, so I was living with this guy named Wayne, really nice guy. But after he passed away, this guy would only play Human Nature, and I'm thinking, I wanted to actually have a talk with him. I was like,
dude.
Yeah, I was like, Wayne, you do realize this guy has a billion songs that are all amazing, and you're just listening to this one song.
I feel really bad for you. That's terrible.
Like, I swear to God, on repeat for like a week.
No, that's
insane.
That's so wrong. Number 5. I want to think of like an album that I just listen to front to back or something. Maybe like Weezer's Blue album.
Blue over Pinkerton?
I love Pinkerton.
Yeah.
But I feel like I already have this like angsty pop punk album. So I can't really have two. That wouldn't be true to like actually what I like and what I listen to have two.
If you change your mind on any of those records, call us back.
Yeah, cool.
We'll edit it.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, no, there's many that could like, I could see like tie for 5th, and then it's like 85 albums.
Yeah. It's also depending on your mood, you know,
Big
like
time.
it's like you got to find this album because you're feeling like this. That's my new top 5 for like how I feel today.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's hard.
Yeah, you know, because again, it's contextual. It's like how you're feeling, and it's like where you're at. There's certain albums. If I'm driving on a long drive, I'm like, boom.
Yeah.
You know, that's like Blue Album or something. It's like long drive. That's definitely going to be 40 minutes. That's going to fly by. It's happening. Like it's happening on this drive. But then there's others. But like, yes, in a different context. If I'm washing the dishes.
I was just gonna bring that back up because like I love thinking of like this is actually good to cook to. This is really good to wash dishes to. Like just the not maybe favorite albums ever, but just to do this one specific thing.
Oh, lately I've been big into dishwashing music and like trying to make dishwashing music, actually.
Oh, wow.
Because that's like my favorite time to listen to music.
Yeah. Are we like the sound of bubbles?
No, it's like, okay, what are my dishwashing music? Like I like Mariah Carey when I'm washing the dishes.
Yeah.
For some reason, like there's other singers from that era that I really like, but not washing the dishes. It's like Janet. No,
Yeah.
no, I need Mariah. I'm washing the dishes.
Yeah.
It has to strike this thing where it's like it's dancey, but musical. Like it's got to be organic but dancey, and like I'm just into it right now. I don't know why.
So you're getting all the dishes done.
That boom, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's our time. Thank you so much for being on our show, Shad.
gladly. Yeah,
That's
that's fun.
great. Fantastic.
You've been listening to this Broken Mixtape, our special guest, Shad. Check out Hip Hop Evolution. We don't know when the next season is, but hopefully coming up soon. And look out for Shad's new record next year.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you. You've been listening to episode 20 of this Broken Mixtape with our special guest, rapper and host Shadrach Kabango, most widely known as Shad. If you like what we do, we would really appreciate if you would share our podcast with your friends and also if you would rate us so we can reach more listeners. Also be sure to check out thisbrokenmixtape.com where you'll find this episode's Spotify playlist and all of our other past interviews. Return next week where we will be joined by our special guests Josh and Chantel from Parkdale Vintage Sports and Workwear Shop in Vintage We Trust. Until next time.